the first, the person who gets the most votes gets a 4-year term. And then so on. And then the next person, after all the 4-year terms are filled, then would get the reduced term. Is that how you understood it, Delegate Cox?
Yes, Delegate Krim. I found it on line 22, page 2. That's the section. It says paragraph 242, Roman numeral 2.
Yep. I stand corrected. I see it.
I know that was the big concern we had for tabling it, at least primarily. I know that there were other ancillary issues, but that was something that I thought was, I know Senator Young spoke to that.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't overly fond of it, but of that section, but.
If I may,
Sure.
that language is the same language that you passed out of delegation last session.
No.
The only thing the amendments do is to clarify that if the seat is vacated,
Less than 30 days.
well, so right. So the intent was if the seat is vacated for a 4-year term prior to the next election, even though it's an election for the next 4-year term. So for example, somebody is elected in 2020. This year they vacate their seat. The language was clarified so that they would stand for election in the next cycle, not in the next 4-year cycle, but the next cycle, meaning that if they were elected in 2020 for a seat that was up in 2024, they would stand for election in 2022. They would then stand again for election in 2024 because it's for that 4-year seat. If the clarifying language states that if the Board of Education seat is vacated, let's say they were elected in 2020, they vacate the seat in 2023, they stand for election in 2024 for that 4-year term. The intent was that whoever is appointed stands for election in the next cycle, regardless of when that seat is up.
Right, for the balance of the term.
Correct.
Yes. But I don't know how else you would do it if you didn't take the next person who got the most votes to fill that vacancy.
Does that happen anywhere else in any other election? You either get elected or you don't. I don't like that, but if you all want it, I'll go along with it.
I personally can't answer that.
I've never heard of that ever happening.
The idea is to not have an appointment fill the balance of the term. If there's an election cycle that is happening, to have that person stand for election so the voters decide who is in that seat rather than the appointment process.
That's not the part I was objecting to. I was objecting to the next highest vote getter when they lost the election getting the appointment.
Oh, that's not in there. That's just at that election, the person who gets the vacated seat that was appointed is the person who gets the next votes. That's not how the vacancy will be filled by appointment, because I don't agree with that either.
That's how I understood it.
And again, that language is not new. That language is the same language that passed the delegation last session.
Yeah. Didn't like it then either, but
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'm just looking it over and I'm looking here and it says, I'll just read it to try to understand it a little better. It is a little confusing. After all vacant positions for a full term of 4 years are filled, this is at the general election. That's number 4, Roman numeral 2. Roman numeral 1, just to clarify, says the candidates with the highest vote totals shall first fill. So it uses the term shall first fill any vacant positions. Then it says in Roman numeral 2, after all vacant positions for the full term of 4 years are filled, the candidate with the next highest vote total shall fill the position for which a successor was appointed. So this is a runner-up filling of a vacancy that came through an appointment to serve the remainder of that term. This is a full remainder of term. I guess the amendment that you're mentioning would then change that to the next election. But I still think that this is not necessary. I don't think that it's the way that the voters would like the board to be filled. I think the voters want to vote on who goes into the Board of Education. And then to have it done in this way seems to be somebody that the voters disfavored, then automatically it says shall then fill the position. So that would be my concern. I would move to table it until we can strike that language.
Is there a second? Okay, what is the will of the delegation? We have now discussed this bill at least 4 times. We passed the bill last year. The bill is in the same posture. We've now discussed the amendments more than we've discussed the bill. So, the motion to table failed. Is there another motion?
I'll move approval.
Approval of the amendments?
I'll move approval of the amendments.
Is there a second to approve the amendments?
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
Discussion?
Can we get
discussion. Yes.
Ben to explain to us the confusing language we're stumbling over right here?
Is Ben, can you come in and clarify the clarifying amendments?
Yeah. If it would be helpful, maybe if people pull up the reprint, just so, yeah, while I go over it, maybe. But so yeah, we had the bill from last year, and the issue, like the initial issue, as I remember, was having, and there was an issue that I remember Senator Young pointing out with how it said is appointed, and we changed it to elected on page 2 in line 12 of the amendment. And that was important because we weren't having until a successor is appointed. We wanted to be elected. Okay, so if you look at D2 on page 2, that's when you have a vacancy occurring 30 days or less before the candidate registration deadline. So in that case, if it's 30 days or less, subject to the confirmation of the county council, we have them elected in accordance with 4I, okay? That's on D4I, which is in line 18 through 21. And in D4I, that's your full term election, okay? And that's because the election is 30 days or less, so we're just gonna fill that vacancy with the full term. And I think that that makes sense. That was clear. Does anyone have questions about that first part?
No.
Okay, and then on the second part.
I think the part that's unclear is the runner-up, what that means and when.
Sure. Okay, so then let's continue to, we have D2 there, and then in D3, this is where we have a vacancy more than 30 days before the candidate registration deadline. So this could be, a week after the start of someone's term who goes vacant. And I think that's this is where this is like the thrust of the bill, is trying to prevent a situation where you have a vacancy and the vacancy is, it's for a significant portion of a elected office, but then it's just appointed, because that was the existing law. That was D2 on page 2, lines 5 through 7. That was where you just had the county council and the county executive appointing somebody. So D3 is kind of the thrust of the bill. And as we're discussing at D3, we have it more than 30 days before the candidate registration deadline. That's on page 2, lines 13 through 17. So more than 30 days before the candidate registration deadline. And And so if we read that, if there's a vacancy by an elected member occurring more than 30 days before the candidate registration deadline, the county executive appoints somebody subject to confirmation of the county council, and then they fill the vacancy on that vacancy until a qualified individual is elected under 4II, okay? And then 4II is what we've been discussing. I think there were some people mentioned issues with that. That's when you have, after all the vacant positions for a full term are filled, this is the 3I, filling until a qualified individual is elected in accordance with 4II of this section, of this subsection. That's not for the full term. It's just for the remainder of that term. And then if you continue into continue to D3II on below, it says the individual elected under item 1 of this paragraph shall serve for the remainder of that term until a successor is elected and qualifies. And so that last language there in D3II is until a successor is elected and qualifies, and that's for the full term. And so that's kind of the way to tie it all up. And that's how you get the fully functioning system where we're filling the vacancies this way.
Madam Chair.
Still never.
Okay.
I'll get Pippi. Yeah.
So Ben, I think the concern is not the 99% of information you just provided. It's the 1% about having a runner-up jump into a spot. Why would there ever be necessary to have anyone as a runner-up jump into a spot when the county executive could appoint somebody to fill a spot until the next election, whether that's 2 years away or 4 years away? That's what everyone's asking, is why is there ever a scenario where a runner-up would pop into a spot? Why does that need to be in there at all?
Mm-hmm.
That was my question too. Thank you.
I thought it was Al.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Delegate Krim.
I don't look at this person as a runner-up. When people go to vote, they're going to know that there are 3 or 4 full-term positions available and a partial term available. So I don't look at this person being as a runner-up necessarily. People who are going to vote are going to know what's available for those people to be elected to. We're just saying not a runner-up. It's the person 5th on the list that gets the most votes. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a different way of looking at it, I would like to hear that.
Okay.
Senator Young.
Yeah. I think it's the wording and using runner-up in there that's what is confusing the whole thing. If there's 4 spots and 3 are full-time and 1 is just a partial, then it really should say that and not use the words runner-up, because it sounds like a loser got
Right.
a, and that's what I've never liked. And so I think Delegate Krim probably explained it right, but that's what the word should say instead of runner-up.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with the senator. Maybe the word is wrong, but that is the process. So if we need to change the word to get the process correct, then let's do that. But let's don't change the process.
Real quick, just because we're in a discussion here, and I think I'm the one who asked for the discussion. I remember talking about how the next highest vote getter or runner-up or whatever you want to call this person ever getting on the Board of Education. I thought this entire debate was whether the county executive could fill a vacancy. So I'm just, the reason we keep going around this bill is because it seems like the goalposts keep changing, or my impression of the goalposts are changing, but I just don't ever remember there being an option for the next highest vote getter to just come into any increment of time. I thought it was either the county executive was appointing a vacancy or it would go to a ballot. And I thought this discussion was just that the county executive would fill the spot until the next election. I could be missing something. I just don't remember ever talking about this.
Can we hold for a minute, please? Oh, we've got to establish an order here, and Joy Schaefer has her hand up. Joy, would you like to clarify something?
Well, before I do, the county executive also had her hand up, so she might want to chime in.
Sorry, I didn't see it on my panel.
Fine. Basically, what Delegate Pippi is saying is the goal of the bill. Right now, the county executive can appoint someone to fill a vacancy on the Board of Education, and that has to be confirmed by the county council. This bill would say if that person is early in their term, before the midterm election, that person would then have to run for office to see if they could be elected for the balance of the 2-year terms. If there was only a year or some shorter period of time left on that person's term, they would just fill the appointed time and then run for the next 4-year term if they chose to. So this allows the voters to come in to a midterm election for that Board of Ed seat and elect somebody for it rather than have that position be appointed. So the goal of, and this is Steve McKay, Councilman Steve McKay's bill, is to give the voters a voice rather than to have that person be appointed for the entire time. And so I think that the wording of a runner-up is a bit of a confusion, but it's really the person with the next highest number of votes in an election will fill that vacant seat that had been previously appointed.
Well, that's much more clear than the reading of the bill. If we take the word runner-up out, does it denigrate the rest of that sentence in any way?
Madam Chair, that verbiage does not exist. I think what you're referring to in terms of the runner-up language is the candidate with the next highest vote total shall fill the position for which a successor has been appointed.
Delegate Young, we have Delegate Krim and
I see her.
Ben with a hand up. Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Krim is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I read the bill this morning, before we got on here, it was clear to me how this process was to work. So I agree with what Joy is saying, the next highest vote getter, however that language is, no runner-up is there. And I support the voters voting for a member of the Board of Education other than an appointment that may go for a long period of time. I support that. So I support the core value of the bill.
Okay. Ben vote.
Yeah, this is a good feedback. And I mean, you guys are also really familiar with this and how you want it to work. I'm not sure if you agree with this statement, but it's my understanding also that there may be an issue with having like a sort of a special election or something instead of this next highest vote total function, because there may be a scenario where somebody doesn't want to run for a seat if it's for a limited term, but otherwise, yeah, I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, Delegate Kerr has his hand up.
I think the confusion results from the situation that happened when I was on the Board of Education and was elected delegate. At that point, that seat would become vacant when I was sworn in as delegate. And some people had suggested at the time that the next highest vote getter simply be given my term. Or the remaining 2 years of my term. And I think that's why we're still confused. And from what Ben is explaining, that would not apply here because the election would be over. So there would be no special election. We're just waiting till the next election cycle, which would have been the end of my term.
Right.
So this new wording would not have changed how my successor was appointed in the previous election.
And just refresh my memory. When you became a delegate and the county executive appointed your successor, was that confirmed by the county council?
Yes.
Okay, so that process is the same. It was just left out of the original version of this bill, and those words to reinforce that were added on through amendments. Okay, thanks. Any other questions or debate?
Senator
Madam
Young
Chair.
has his hand, Senator Young has his hand up, and I think Delegate Krim as well.
Okay, thanks. Senator Young?
Yeah, this has to be rewritten. I understand the intent now, but if all of us are having trouble understanding it, what's the general public going to do? It's got to be written in clear legal words like an ordinance should be written. At this point, I don't want to approve it based on the understanding. I want to make sure that the wording is right so that we don't have this confusion going into the future. The impression is when you use the word runner-up that someone that lost the election gets the next spot. It isn't meant that way. So let's write it the way it's meant and have it clear and then approve the thing. But we've got to have the wording better because people are going to continue to read this wrong.
So is there a motion to table the discussion of the amendments till we can have them written in a more clear fashion, which means we will have to call a meeting to discuss this one more time?
I'll move again, Madam Chair. I'll second then.
Okay, there's a motion to table the discussion of the amendments and a second. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone opposed and, oh wait, Krim, Young, and Pippi have their hands up, so.
No, we've already voted.
Yeah, that's to
Yeah.
speak.
You can't go back.
I think,
No, I'm just saying, do we have 5 of us that agreed to table the discussion? I didn't hear 5, I only heard 3.
I
That's
think you need
correct.
to do a roll call.
Yeah, do a roll
Okay.
call.
Let's do a roll call. Senator Young,
Aye.
Delegate Krim,
Aye.
Delegate Kerr,
aye.
Delegate Cox,
Aye.
Delegate Pepe,
Yes.
and a yes for Delegate Lewis Young. So unanimously, we have decided to table the discussion of the amendments, have them written in a more clear fashion, and we will bring this back for a special meeting. Thank you very much for the discussion, and let's hope next time we can get this right. Okay,
Yeah.
very brief item on the agenda.
Delegate, pardon me, Delegate Lewis Young. Delegate Krim still has her hand raised. I didn't know if she wanted to add anything. Okay.
Delegate Krim, is that up from before? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I was at a meeting of delegation chairs with the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker asked that we prioritize what we used to call bond bill requests. I think there's a new name now. I'm not sure what it is, but it's
Initiative.
Bond initiatives.
bond initiatives. Okay. So rather than have a conversation now that would likely last a really long time, I'm going to, and since the House and the Senate handle the bond initiatives very differently, I'm going to ask all the members of the House if you would send me your top 3 choices in rank order. What we will then do is a weighted average, And I'll submit that list to both the speaker and to Delegate Krim, who sits on the Capital Committee. And so we will have full delegation input. Anybody have any comments or questions about that process? If you don't like that, I'm happy to just set up a House meeting after you've submitted your prioritization to discuss that.
Question, Madam Chair.
Yes, Delegate Pepe.
So, you know, we tried this the first year of this delegation, and it didn't work out very well for District 4. District 4 kind of had to fend for themselves. That being said, one bond bill on the entire District 4 team. So that's been submitted. I mean, I pulled everybody's bond history and legislation, so there's only one. So we can happy to get that to you, but you know, in a 4-4 delegation, you know, we just want to make sure that we're looking out for the county as a whole and not for individual delegate or legislative districts, so to speak.
Yeah.
We have one priority in District 4 that's been submitted. So
Okay.
I don't know if giving that to an individual delegation member is a pro or a con, I'm not really sure, but I just want to make sure that whatever the process is, it's fair for the entire county. And I think you guys probably have more requests than we do, but we have one. So.
Well, I don't have any, so I have no preferences here. I'm going to, you know.
Madam Chair, I've had my hand up for a while.
Okay, let me just finish my sentence.
Okay.
And call on you. I'm going to submit what the speaker requested of me, which is the delegation's priorities. I will note in my letter that District 4 only has one request. And then I will submit the priorities for District 3. I suggested sharing that letter with Delegate Krim because she sits on the Capitol.
Oh, shit.
And I wanted her subcommittee, I wanted her to be aware of the delegation's votes.
No, that's good. And listen, we appreciate any help that Delegate Krim could definitely offer the residents in District 4, and I'm sure they would appreciate that. I just want to make sure that, you know, our priorities don't get lost in the shuffle. So
Okay.
my responsibility is ensuring that the 130,000 people that I represent are, you know, taken care of in Annapolis, and I need to make sure that it gets to where it needs to go. So
Yeah. And at the end of the day, however the House comes out, the Senate might be different, and who knows? I mean, last year I thought the Senate prevailed a bit more. This year the House could prevail a bit more. A lot of it's unpredictable. Delegate Krim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, I don't even know what all of the bond initiatives are. I don't know where there's a list or what they are. So that's the first thing I need to say. I only have one, and if you have none, I don't know what Delegate Kerr has. And of course, Delegate Kerr has now said he has one, and Delegate Pepe has one. So I don't think any one of those are going to be a problem, so to speak. But as far as the first year in the delegation, I think together, I don't know what wasn't funded, but maybe some were only partially funded. That could have happened. But there are two chambers here who provide input into bond initiatives. So if your bond initiative wasn't funded, it perhaps was funded on the Senate side. So we're going to have to go back and check that because I don't recall there being a particular project that had no funding. And if there was, then I think we came back the next year and funded it. So, so I just want to make that clarifying point there.
Yeah, I know first year my initiatives were not funded in the House. They were funded in the Senate.
Right.
We only have three, it sounds like there are only three bond initiatives from the House, which means
Delegate Senator Young has his hand up.
there's no point in, thank you, there's no point in trying to prioritize them. We'll just submit all three. But keep in mind, while we might get all three, it might not be the full amount requested. So just keep that in mind. Senator Young.
Yes, the Senate does do it differently. I'll be given some money and Senator Huff will be given some money. And they pretty much say, what do you want done with your share? So I have three this year that I think I can probably get all three funded. I don't know what Senator Huff has. We haven't talked. We usually do. The point is, the one advantage of sharing is that if one of you in either district is putting in the same thing we're putting in and we know we can get it, then it would give you the opportunity to ask for something else so that we both don't put in the same thing and we get less money. So we want to try to maximize how much we can get. So I'm more than willing to share the three I have in, and I'm sure Senator Huff will do that. And then, like I said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get those. So if you all have the ones in I have, it's an opportunity to ask for something else. I've had two requests at the last minute that I know I can't fund. So maybe if I'm getting these three and one of you are asking for the same thing, you can do one of those that I can't do. That way we get more money.
Okay, I think I heard you say if we can share our list of three with you, you certainly will consider that input in your requests. Is that what
Well,
you said?
I will tell you what I can get. I have a feeling that one or two of your requests may be ones I'm putting in. It would give you the opportunity to ask for something else and get more money.
Yes, I'm fairly certain that two of our requests also exist on your side. So, okay, we will take responsibility for listing those requests, and we're going to communicate it to everybody, the entire delegation, as well as the speaker, and on the Senate side, you do with it whatever your process is.
I just have one thing to add here, Madam Chair, and that the governor, as usual, has not put any money in the budget for bond initiatives. So we are going to have to go find that money.
Yeah.
So I don't want to overpromise people, because currently there is no line item in the capital budget for bond initiatives. Okay.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I want to reinforce that for a second reason. Not only isn't it in the governor's budget, this year is a tighter year, and last year we got an extra $5 million that we will not get this year. So I just want everybody to have very realistic expectations for this year. Any bond initiative that's approved will be a gift. Any further conversations?
Delegate, we have Delegate Pippy with his hand raised.
Madam Chair, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, just please CC the entire delegation on the letter that goes to the speaker. That would help us out.
Yes, I just mentioned that I will share it with the entire delegation.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if we have a representative from the Board of Ed here, but Jay Mason contacted me during the week to say the Board of Ed was requesting a large distribution center for vaccines. Is Jay or someone else from the Board of Ed with us?
Yep, I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
After a discussion with Congressman Trone's representative, it was brought to my attention that Western Maryland needs a vaccination site. And in the further conversations, I was glad to hear that Western Maryland is on the governor's list. So I am here to ask the delegation today to take the lead in advocating for a Western Maryland site in Frederick County. I think our location provides many opportunities for our neighboring counties and also Allegheny and Garrett. So I would like for you all to send a letter to the acting Secretary of Health and make sure that we can get the next vaccination site in Frederick County. And as you can see, our vaccinations have been reduced greatly, which is concerning to our community. And I think to help get our schools open, our community back on track. I see County Executive Gardeners here and our city and county partners for economic development and Rick Weldon. I'm sure everybody would be happy to advocate for a mass vaccination site in Frederick County.
Delegate Krim has her hand up. Would you like to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair. So President Mason, do you have a site in mind? Because if we're going to lobby for this, we should have a site that we direct the governor to.
One site that comes to mind is the Key Stadium with the proximity to 70 and also 270. The other location that would have a large scale parking lot would be the Fredericktown Mall, which doesn't have the best proximity trying to get to and from 70 and 270. But I think the Key Stadium provides the best opportunity for us.
So has there been discussion said with the city on doing that?
As of now, no.
Okay, well, I would suggest that Executive Gardner she may have a.
Okay, I did not know this was going to be on the agenda today, and I wish that the Board of Education would have reached out to me. I have talked to the mayor about the possibility, just very briefly, about using the Key Stadium. And so I think it is a possibility. I have also reached out to the governor's staff multiple times to say that we would be interested in engaging in a discussion about having a mass vaccination site located in Frederick County. So, we need to really have a discussion about what their expectation would be and so forth in terms of a site. I do have an impression that they're interested in locating a site a little bit further west, potentially in Washington County. But I do think it's a reasonable thing to ask for. Certainly, I've had significant advocacy for additional doses of vaccine. The vaccine coming to the health department and to the hospital in total has been reduced by half. And unfortunately, both myself and Dr. Brookmeyer and others are encouraging people to go to the mass vaccination sites outside of the county because that's where the vaccine has gone. And so we hope that advocacy will improve the number of doses that come here. We certainly are willing to do more. And we're willing to open up and ready to open up a drive-through, which would accommodate a significant number of people. We identified 7 places that we could have vaccine clinics, and we've opened 3 because we can't open more till we have more vaccine. Mm-hmm. So we're running actually pretty slow throughput right now, and it could be a lot faster if we had vaccine. So vaccine is the bigger problem, but right. I certainly support the idea of generating a request for a mass vaccination site in Frederick County.
I'm going to recommend to the delegation that we write a delegation letter requesting a large site in Frederick County and say a number of appropriate sites are currently under discussion and can be readily identified in the near future. Does anyone object to that delegation letter?
Senator Young has his hand up.
Senator Young. Oh,
I think we should certainly do the letter. Bring it up in today's meeting. We meet with Schrader every Monday. But as was stated by the county exec, I know they're going to look for a more central location for Western Maryland, and we're at the far end of it. So chances are they're going to put it in Hagerstown, but I'll still advocate for one here. And there isn't any reason as the vaccines increase that we can't have a bunch of them. At some point, we just need to get that stuff out as fast as we can get it out.
Senator Young, when you have that conversation with Acting Secretary Schrader, may I suggest that you ask, is the site going to be chosen based on geography or based on population? Because if you look at a convenient location based on population density and mass, it might be a very different location than just putting your finger in the middle of a map.
I'll ask that, but frankly, Hagerstown is just as convenient. Half the population's out there and half of it's here. And we're closer to other jurisdictions than Western Maryland is. So either way, we're in a tough spot, but I will still advocate for it strongly.
Okay, and we'll still write the letter. If you don't get it, if you don't ask.
Delegate Krim has her hand up.
Delegate Krim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know officially in the legislature, we're considered Western Maryland.
Right.
I think that we could also be considered Central Maryland. So I think we're that borderline. So, you know, we could look at Howard County, you could look at Carroll County, who is also considered part of Western Maryland.
Yes.
I think Carroll County would rather come to Frederick County to get their vaccine. That's just my opinion. And I think it's more convenient. So I think that we ought to try to work both ends of that. Because I know what Senator Young says, and I think he's right that they'll probably want to go more west. I think we have to couch that in terms of, well, we are officially Western Maryland, but we're more centrally located as a Central Maryland site.
We'll put that statement in the letter. Thank you. Any further discussion on this topic before we move into the two presentations?
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you. And thank you
Appreciate it.
for joining us today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
The next topic on our agenda is a presentation from our business community on the state of business in Frederick County. Now, I know that you all were waiting for some of your other partners to join, so I'm going to ask Rick if you're all here now.
We are all here, and I think I see everybody unmuting and lighting up. So all of the members of our team are ready to go, and all I need to do is share my screen and we can start our presentation.
Rick, you should have access to share your screen, I believe. If you don't, let me know.
Going for it now, Chris. Thanks.
While you're sharing the screen, I neglected to introduce Chris as my new legislative director. I think most of you know Chris. He just joined recently and has hit the ground running. So we'll formally welcome Chris.
So hopefully you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No. Let me fix that.
I see Richard's art, but not your screen.
Yeah.
There we go.
Got it?
Yep.
So first of all, Chairwoman Lewis Young, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I know we had to reschedule, and in your office, both Ben Reese initially and more recently, one of our leadership Frederick County superstars, Chris Fair, was great in helping get our logistics together. So I want to thank the members of the delegation for a couple of reasons. The obvious, this opportunity to talk to you about what I think you already know, which is how difficult this past year has been on our business community, and particularly on our small business community, and even within that sectors of our business community. And we're prepared to talk to you about that today. But I do want to thank you for your work and sacrifice. So I have a little inkling of an idea about how hard your work is for 90 days in the middle of winter. But under no circumstance I could ever imagine would I have been able to function comfortably in the environment that I've been watching you guys seamlessly function in. And yes, an admission character flaw, I still watch the floor sessions alternate between House and Senate. And to see how it is you have to advocate for policy in the state during this pandemic time, it's just unimaginable. But appreciate all that you do and how much passion you use in your advocacy. So if I could, I'd like to start our presentation. I'm joined by our partners, and you're going to get to hear from them because they are subject matter experts in what they're going to present to you. But I kind of wanted to give you the 50,000-foot view, and it won't come as a surprise to any of you to hear that the Frederick County business community has suffered significant losses over the last year. Every single sector of the 62 business sectors that we track at the Chamber of Commerce has suffered some level of loss. I estimate, based just on our membership, and please remember that the membership of the Chamber is simply a small reflection of the larger business community in Frederick County. I think at one point there were 10,000 active business licenses in Frederick County, and we only have 900 members. So, you know, we're a small subset of what I consider the total business community in Frederick County. But just looking at our membership, I think where we are right now, we're looking at maybe 15 to 17% of our small business infrastructure may not make it through this pandemic. And again, that's just looking at our specific membership. So I think you can extrapolate that into a larger number. Hospitality, as John will tell you, has been seriously impacted during this time. Our small retail, personal services, gyms and fitness centers, it's been an incredibly difficult year. The layoffs and furloughs that we're aware of have typically impacted our most vulnerable citizens, right? I mean, hourly wage rate workers are the people that were affected most significantly. And then the continuing struggle is with entertainment and event venues, and then all of the subcontractors and gig economy workers that support those things like caterers and DJs and photographers and pipe and drape and limousine companies, deeply, deeply impacted. I mean, six-figure financial impacts for those industries. And then things like nonprofits. So our chamber has the highest number of 501c3 nonprofits that are paying members of the chamber. We have almost 130 nonprofit members. In the first round of the PPP, there were categories of nonprofits that weren't even able to apply for the assistance that was made available. So the impacts are deep, they're significant, and they cut across sectors. Early on, there was a lot of confusion about the application of what we've come to know as the rules, restrictions, and guidance. And I'll give you one example that I know Ron can relate to. Murray Friedman at Hunting Creek Outfitters, in the early days of this thing, had to close. And while he was closed, I could go to Sam's Club or Costco and purchase the same fishing shirt that Murray was unable to sell me on North Market Street in downtown Frederick. And then even when some of the restrictions eased up and lightened up, it still was an impact. And I'll tell you, a lot of our small retailers never really felt like they understood adequately why those large big box multi-dry good and grocery store retail outlets were able to operate with no restriction while they were severely restricted. And here's an element of this whole thing, and it's unemployment insurance, that I know all of you can directly relate to because I know you personally and your staff have been struggling to try to help people that have been impacted by this system. But yesterday, I received an email from a stranger because he saw me quoted in an article a week and a half ago in the Frederick News Post about unemployment benefits in Beacon. to ask me if I could help him figure out how to navigate through the backlog because he was hung up in that whole investigation into fraudulent claims and his legitimate claim wasn't moving forward. And again, I know all of you have been working on this, and I've talked to all of your staff, and I know they've been working on this, but that problem exacerbated everything else that was going on that we were aware of. I have to tell you, and you'll hear this again in the next couple minutes, I can't imagine where we would be were it not for PPP, EIDL, employee retention tax credits, restaurant grants, closed venue grants, or the micro grants that the city put forward. I just can't imagine where we'd be. But I'll tell you where our membership would be. I would have lost more than a quarter of my members. And I know that because they are past due in their membership, but we're not dropping them. The only members that we're dropping are members who ask us to drop or have closed their business. So I'm carrying about a quarter of our membership with a past due receivable because that's what we have to do. I've said it a million times, we're a family and we need our family more now than ever. So we pushed our content out in front of our paywall. So anybody, you don't have to be a member to take advantage of all of our training on how to use these grant programs or rescue loans or how to get full forgiveness from your PPP. We pushed all that out in front of our paywall so it can be accessed by any business owner in Frederick County without regard to their membership. So I'm really proud to be a part of a team of leaders that work strategically and collaboratively to create economic opportunity throughout Frederick County. And that's the people that are joining us on your Zoom meeting today. And that's Helen Profiter from the County Office of Economic Development, Richard Griffin, the Director of the Department of Economic Development for the City of Frederick, Karen Norman, who's the Director of the Downtown Frederick Partnership, and John Fiesler, the Director of our DMO Visit Frederick. This group of people, these 5 people have been meeting weekly throughout the pandemic, and actually more frequently than that, but we have a standing meeting on our calendars. And it's a Zoom meeting. It used to be in person, but it's a Zoom meeting where we share challenges, opportunities, and strategies to help support our private sector partners. Our collaboration is unusual in Maryland. We've not been able to find any jurisdiction in Maryland that has this close, mutually dependent relationship. We don't compete with each other, we coordinate with each other. And we've always done that, even pre-pandemic, but this partnership has never been important as it's been this year, both for us, for our individual agencies and organizations, and for the community at large. So now I'd like to turn the time over to the person amongst this group, and we call ourselves the Bagel Group because they used to meet at Beans and Bagels on Patrick Street. But the person who I call the quarterback of this little team, and that's my friend Helen Profiter, who is the Director of Economic Development for Frederick County.
Thank you, Rick. I'm happy to be the quarterback. I don't know that I am though, but so Rick gave you a lot of pretty bleak information. I want to talk about what we did. So in the last 7 months, we learned and became experts in how to deliver quickly business grants. So we offered $11.9 million over the last 7 months in business grants. And of that 11.9 million, 7.2 million came from the federal CARES funding. A little over 4 million came from the state of Maryland Rainy Day Fund. And then 500,000 came from Frederick County Office of Economic Development Small Business Fund. So very quickly, I just want to run through what grants we did. So we started out with the Jumpstart Grant. We gave $10,000 to small businesses, $6,000 to full-time farmers, and $3,000 to micro businesses. We then very quickly jumped into 2 rounds of childcare grants. Those grants went to the childcare providers, not to actual parents, because we started to see businesses asking their employees to return to the workplace, and we needed to keep our childcare facilities up and moving. So those grants were for intensive cleaning and PPE supplies. Then it started getting cold out. So we offered an outdoor heater and propane gas grant to restaurants and our craft beverage businesses so that they could keep outdoor dining as long as possible. Then we jumped into 2 rounds of food service grants, thanks to the state of Maryland. And we are currently in our 2nd round of the hotel and bed and breakfast grants, thanks to the state of Maryland. So with all our grants, our grant team has effectively been able to design an application, run through the process, and then deposit money into businesses' bank accounts somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks. So we are one of the fastest in the state, I would say, if not the fastest, to be able to deliver business grants. So as I'm going to leave business grants at this point and jump into the next slide. As Rick said, 2020 was a bad year on many levels, and yet Frederick County has had many, many economic development wins. We continue to stay incredibly busy, both with our businesses who are expanding and attracting new businesses. So this slide and the next slide are going to talk about, you're going to see and highlight 90 of our wins, 90 wins during a pandemic. That's amazing. So the very first was our Kroger win. That was one of the largest in the state of Maryland. They took over our Toys R Us building, and we're thankful for that. And also under the industry of distribution, we won Rainforest Distribution, who distributes food. Not surprising, life science comes in with the largest amount of expansions and attractions. Frederick County continues to know that that is a huge growth area for us. So we won AccuFlow, Motivar Pharmaceuticals, Charles River Labs, Signigen, and Stage Bio. And then as the nation struggles to keep manufacturing going, Frederick County has created a huge focus on the sustainability of manufacturing. And we've had 2 businesses expand, Attaboy Brewery and Carter Controls. And then we attracted Thacker's Caskets, which is their headquarters and their manufacturing. If you're driving down Route 70, you might be able to see their new location. So on the next page, we're going to showcase some of our smaller wins. But you know what? A big win and a small win is still a win, and we're still going to celebrate all of them. So just alone on this page, the city of Frederick adds an additional 31 wins. Thurmont comes in strong with 2 wins. Newmarket and Emmitsburg both had a win. I think they're all fantastic. If we look at industry base, we add another 2 small biotechs and 7 craft beverage businesses. So that continues to be an industry that continues to grow. So Frederick County continues to have one of the strongest business attraction and job growths in the state of Maryland. And 2021 is not slowing down. We are still very, very, very busy working with business expansions and attractions. So I'm glad to share some of our good news during a tough time. And I'm going to hand over now to our Executive Director of Visit Frederick, John Fiesler.
Thanks, Helen, and good morning, everybody. After coming down to visit you all in Annapolis every year since the last millennium ended, it's an interesting experience, but I know you're well aware of that. As Rick mentioned, and as I know all of you know, hospitality and leisure industry has been hit very hard over these past 11 months. Nationally, 40% of all jobs lost were in leisure and hospitality. And in that period of time since last March, $500 billion was lost nationally in the travel sector. And that includes $64 billion that would have been paid in federal, state, and local taxes. As you can see on the slide, hotels in Frederick County saw a 40% drop in revenue year over year for all of 2020, occupancy falling by 28%, On the bright side, we're doing better than hotels are nationally. There was a 33% drop in occupancy nationally, down to 44% for the whole year. And typically nationally, it would be in the mid 60s. And when I'm on calls with my counterparts around the DC metropolitan area, I have to say we're very fortunate compared to other destinations that have a number of hotels who have not even reopened since last March. We do appreciate everything that the state has been doing, as we know you are aware of this impact. There are two bills that will have hearings this week. HB 1176 in House Ways and Means coming up this week, and on the Senate side, SB 730, allowing an individual to claim a credit against their state income tax for certain travel, hospitality, and entertainment expenses paid before the end of 2022. There is a cap. The details are spelled out, but again, we would respectfully request your support for that. We do remain certainly optimistic. There are lots of good things happening, as my partners on this presentation are talking about. And so we also know from surveys that there is a pent-up demand for travel. As soon as people feel safe and the doors are open, they will be out and about, and we hope that we can help lead the recovery as it occurs. Thanks, and with that, Rick, am I turning it over to Richard?
Thank you, John. It's I guess ironic that we're making this presentation to you all today on the Maryland Economic Development Association's 2021 Economic Development Day. And we've all gotten very good at multitasking on Zoom. And so several of us had multiple Zooms going on this morning, but on my phone, I'm watching the Economic Development Day panel, which includes Bill Ferguson, Adrian Jones, Brian Simonaire, and Kathy Schlega. So it's been very interesting hearing their perspective on where things are going down in Annapolis while we're working here with you in Frederick. In addition to the grants that Helen mentioned earlier, the city of Frederick also put forward a number of small business relief grants, including a small micro grant program that we launched only weeks after the pandemic began. To some of the, particularly it went to some of the hardest hit and small entrepreneurs and businesses that were struggling to make rent and electric payments. In total, we gave out about $400,000 with an average grant award of around $2,700. And 1 in 3 of those, when they were surveyed, said that had it not been for the local assistance they received from the city and the county, the state, they would not have been able to stay in business. And I'm happy to report that as of this moment, about 96% of the grant recipients are still in business. However, most of them, three quarters of them, are saying that they still need assistance. And what we're hearing from the accountants is that many of them have made it because they've been able to punt their rent or their mortgage payments. And when those come due, if their revenue streams have not increased substantially, they are going to really struggle to be able to make it. Next slide. I just wanted to highlight where the money has gone, where it came from. 2/3 of the money that we gave out came from the Federal CARES Act, but I wanted to highlight one small segment, private donations. I wanted to note that here in Frederick, and this just is, the way our community has operated for so many years, the Rotary clubs, individuals, groups donated money through the Community Foundation that we were able to deploy as part of our grants to businesses. In fact, we had one city staff member who donated $1,000 directly to the program, who wanted to help support the endeavor. And the city has put in around $90,000. Of those grants that we put out, 25% went to minority-owned businesses, 67% to women-owned businesses, and a number of them to veteran-owned businesses. And one of the things that we really worked on was trying to make sure that we spread the money out. We know we have over 800 retailers and small businesses downtown, and they did get a significant number of the grants, almost half. But we also deployed them in West Frederick, South Frederick, East Frederick, and North Frederick, and you can see that here. So in closing, as I turn it over to Karen Norman, I'll just say that we have conducted every Friday through COVID business visits, some in person and some virtual, with the mayor and with a team of economic developers from the city, to ask them how they're doing and find out what they need. And resoundingly, they all have expressed a lot of appreciation for the support they've received already. But as you heard from John and Helen and Rick, the hospitality industry, the restaurants, and certain small retail types operations are the ones that are the most hard hit and really continue to still need incredible assistance. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kara. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to kick off and take us back to April, which seems hard to remember at this point. But at that point, the National Main Street Center did a study, and we found that 74% of our downtown Frederick businesses were at risk of closing permanently if the pandemic continued for 5 months or longer. Obviously, we're past the 5-month mark, but it was an incredibly sobering statistic to receive. And the partnership really kicked up our game. We've been obviously coordinating with our partners. We send out a lot of information. We created training series, cohorts of merchants to support each other, free access for the merchant community, professional support, and a lending library of tools that they can still access for free to help them kind of change their business in reflection of the pandemic. While any business closing is not what we want to report, as of today, throughout the pandemic, our net change is -6. So compared to the 74% that we were fearing at the beginning, our net change is about 2%. And we are very grateful that all of the support and all of the efforts and all of the energy put into our small business community has lessened the impact in a way that we would hope to achieve. And we're especially thrilled to have welcomed 15 new businesses to date into downtown Frederick. And I do know that more are on the way. A big piece of this has been already mentioned earlier is accessing financial assistance. Compared to the national narrative, our small businesses, which truly are the smallest of the small, 76% have received PPP and 50% have received state and local funding. So we're really proud that many of our businesses are accessing these critical supports at this time. We do a survey every year. That's partially how we know how people have accessed PPP. 82% of our small business respondents, which is the retailers, restaurants, and personal service businesses, indicated a somewhat negative or very negative impact to their business as a result of the pandemic. 65% have enhanced their online presence. And I will say at the beginning of the pandemic, only about 2 to 3% of our businesses offered online sales. So it's a huge, huge change in how they're operating as businesses. And I think it'll make them stronger moving forward. And on a positive note, 92% of the respondents said they would recommend downtown Frederick to other retailers. And we think that that's really positive, that despite the troubles that we've had in this year, people are still positive about downtown Frederick as a place to do business, and they see their future here. And so we get anecdotal responses as well. And people said, look, I'm willing to expand when I'm ready because I believe in downtown Frederick. And that is a really powerful and positive thing to receive, especially at a time like this. And I think I am the last slide. Rick may have a concluding slide for us. Rick, you're on mute.
Chris, can you check
Yep.
to make sure he's unmuted?
Here we go.
There we go.
Thanks for your help, Chris. So I want to thank the team, but what we want you to know is we are partners. We consider you partners. We deeply appreciate the statements you make, the work that you do, but we as a team of 5 intend to continue our coordination past COVID, just as we did before COVID. We're convinced that the infrastructure for economic success is still there in Frederick County, and it's in the commitment and dedication and sacrifice of our amazing private sector, I know you know this because you talk to them every day. They wish to reopen, and they'd far more be open than queue up in line to receive stimulus checks. So that's an important reason that we're going to partner with the Frederick County Health Department and Frederick Health Hospital to message the importance of registering for the vaccine and getting it when it's offered to you, because we feel like this is going to be critical to hit the timelines to fully reopen our business community. So if we're serious about that, and the 5 of us are very serious about it, then we're going to message the importance of getting that vaccine. So you're just seeing some images that Jen Gerlach and our team and our marketing and PR group are using, but we're working closely in coordination with Sean Dennis and the Frederick County Health Department, who works for Dr. Brookmeyer, to message the importance of sign up for the vaccine and then get it as soon as it's available to you, as the one way to assure and guarantee our business community that they can reopen. So our contact info, which I think you all have because you communicate with us regularly, is attached, and we're going to provide this slide presentation to you as a PDF as well. But if you had questions for us or comments, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to questions. I do have one suggestion, and that is ask members to reinforce mask wearing, social distancing. I was in a retail establishment on Saturday. Someone came in without a mask. It wasn't reinforced. I had my grandson with me, so I left. The sooner we all engage in safe practices, the sooner we'll be able to maximize our business opportunities.
Yeah, we definitely will. We have been. And it's certainly something that we try to do. Dr. Brookmeyer is great about reminding me that our messages have to include distancing and masks and hand sanitizer and the things that we all know, and distance. And so we know those things to be true. And my partners have all included that in all our communication, but we can always do better. So yeah, we'll certainly do that.
And Rick, maybe some of you saw, we put up variable message boards for the longest time at Patrick Street and Market Street coming into town, reminding people to wear masks, be safe, socially distant.
I have Delegate Krim, then Delegate Kerr, Chairwoman. Oh, you're on mute.
Delegate Krim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to point out to the business community that women have lost more jobs during the pandemic in a disproportionate manner. So I'm wondering, I mean, I have a lot of things to say, but I'm not going to take up everybody's time, but I could probably for the next half hour. But I'm wondering if there's been anything to target women to get them back into the workforce. Now, we advocate for childcare because, in my opinion, unless there's good childcare available, that, that's not going to happen. And maybe that's a sexist thing to say, but that is reality. So I would like to hear from you all if there's been any programs, push, anything to get women back into the workplace.
So if I can start, and then I'll shut up after I've talked about what we're doing. So at the Chamber, we ask our women in business community, the designers of that incredible function we call She Week in late August, we asked them about 2 months ago or actually 3 months ago, to gear up our communication activities relative to women-owned businesses. We just concluded an amazing session with General Linda Singh, who has now retired from the state and is running a very successful consulting business, to talk to women about resiliency generally, but specifically as it relates to women-owned business. And a lot of the women that were a part of that, there were men registered as well, but the women that were a part of that session benefited from General Singh's insights in terms of what we need to do to get those businesses re-energized and pivoted and focusing on alternatives. And then all the folks that registered for that session were given a digital copy, a download of Linda's book on this subject. They have additional programming that they're working on specifically for the point that you raised, Carol, that we see it in our membership. So when I talk about that quarter of my membership I'm carrying, not expecting that they can pay their dues, a large percentage of that are women and minority-owned businesses. We are carrying them, right? I understand at some point I have to negotiate some reasonable alternative to keep them in the membership, but I promise you we're going to use maximum flexibility in that because these are our most at-risk and vulnerable businesses right now. So that's the Chamber's piece.
So for economic development, I will say we've started working with Rick's team already on She Week for 2021, and we have some exciting new week-long events that we're partnering on. It isn't broke, but it's going to get even better for 2021. So in addition to the 10 dedicated economic developers, we also have roughly about 40 workforce development professionals in the county who are working incredibly hard. They've changed over all of their services to be virtual. So we're doing virtual job fairs right now that feel very Zoom related. We just unveiled last week a new training that's a virtual training and over 4,000 different trainings. So for those who find themselves unemployed, start training up, get an additional certification while they're sitting at home. So we're really, really pushing that. In addition to that, our economic development and our workforce development team are working on enhancing our diversity and inclusion programs, much as Rick said, to those underrepresented populations so that we can make sure that they're receiving the grants, they're receiving mentoring, and really just gaining the information that they need to continue to be engaged with our business community.
So, Helen, I don't think anybody's sitting at home, first of all. I think that women at home are providing childcare or trying to find some way to help the family's financial structure. So I would never characterize them as sitting at home. So the next thing that one more thing, I know Delegate Kerr has a question, and I will go to one question is, do you know how you all are going to benefit from the relief bill that the legislature passed? That was the governor's bill, but we passed that bill. Do you all know how you're going to benefit from that? And I will.
So if I can start again, and then everybody else I know that. So this is an issue we've been, I don't want to say obsessively hyper-focused on, but as soon as I get off this Zoom, I'm supposed to call Brett Novick, who owns Boxcar Burgers and makes some of the best hamburgers that you'll ever eat, even though they have pickled beets on them, and I swore I would never touch a pickled beet. But I have to call Brett to talk him through how the sales tax forgiveness is going to work. Look, you did amazing work, and you put aside partisan differences and focused on the people that we serve, kind of rubber meets the road. And yeah, I know I am from the Chamber. We're getting ready to do some more video panels, moderated video panels, to talk about how to access these programs and what these funds mean and what the different how the different programs will operate. But it's literally my phone. And as soon as I get off, I'm calling Brett to talk him through the sales tax forgiveness. And there'll be dozens, multiple dozens of those calls as this rolls out and becomes more clear. But that's why we'll try to use our, our tools, our YouTube to communicate this stuff in a larger fashion, because it's tough to do phone call by phone call.
I'm going to move on to Delegate Kerr because I want to give him an opportunity to ask a question, and we're getting close to the time we need to transition to our final topic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, can you give me that bill number again that you asked us to pay attention to?
Sure. On the House side, it is House Bill 1176. And it
Okay.
gives tax credit for Maryland residents who travel at least 50 miles and make qualified expenditures.
I'd also ask you to take a look at 1137 that I have coming up in Ways and Means tomorrow. And if you have a chance, get me some feedback before.
Will do.
My bill hearing. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would like to take the privilege of piggybacking on Delegate Krim's comment about women being disproportionately hurt from an employment perspective during the pandemic. Childcare is only one aspect of it. There's another major aspect of it, which one of you touched on in your opening comments, and that is the most vulnerable among us were hurt the most by this pandemic. And that's women who still are segregated in the most lowest paying jobs. Waitresses, housekeepers in hotels. I could list off a whole litany of positions that are traditionally occupied by women. So it's a much deeper systemic issue about equal opportunity, about education. Childcare is an immediate fix, but there are still long-term challenges that women face that are magnified by a pandemic or a crisis. Any concluding arguments at 10:28 before we ask our superintendent of schools to come on and inform us about a high visibility topic?
Just thank you again for your support. We drop your names all the time when we're communicating in terms of advocacy, and it's great to know that you're there and your staffs are all fantastic and responsive. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for your update. And please, as we get into heavy voting, do not hesitate to reach out to us, because when you're looking at 1,000 bills, you sometimes miss the subtleties or the unintended consequences. And there are different regional perspectives. So please do reach out. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, with that, our final topic of the day, our Superintendent of Frederick County Schools, Teresa Albin, has graciously agreed to join us and update us on the ever-changing plans for a hybrid model of taking our children back to school. So, Dr. Albin, please share your latest information with us. And I see the chair of the Board of Education is with us as well. So thank you for staying on.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, delegates. And I want to echo, in fact, there are a lot of very strong connections between what you just heard from the business community and some of what I'm going to talk about as we talk about our schools today. I want to start also by thanking you. I am very, very grateful for the collaborative relationship you have with our Board of Education, the contacts that are made, the questions you ask, your receptivity to listening to their positions. And Madam Chair, you said it perfectly when you said the complexity of these bills and needing to hear from the stakeholders that are involved. So thank you very much for all of that. We do appreciate your advocacy. You have been strong supporters of education, and we thank you for that very much. We have moved into what we are calling hybrid learning, and that is the opportunity to really begin to bring back students into the classroom because of social distancing requirements. And we are adhering to that very strictly, needing to keep 6 feet between seats, needing to make sure we monitor traffic, how many students we have. We have capacities listed on every one of our classrooms. We have signage everywhere for distancing, mask wearing, hand sanitizing, putting all of those protocols in place. What the research is telling us is that schools can reopen very safely, and that spread within the school itself will be minimal. And I had the privilege of attending a national conference on education last week and listening to my colleagues from across the country, many of whom have been open since September, and what they've done and the things they've had to do. So excuse me. So the hybrid model, because of those limitations, we can bring about half of our children in for one cohort who comes on Monday and Tuesday. We bring the other half in for another cohort on Thursday and Friday. Wednesday is a day of all virtual instruction so that we can clean our facilities, and particularly any kind of materials that need to be shared. So keyboards and things like that as we transition from one cohort to the other. We started this February 16th, and we had one incredibly amazing, successful day, and then Mother Nature stepped in. And so we are excited and ready to get back to hybrid tomorrow, but I will share with you, and I don't think Mr. Mason will mind if I name drop, that a certain young Mason was actually disappointed that he was going to have a snow day last Thursday because that was going to be his day back to school. So I can't tell you how excited our students were to finally be able to get back to school. One of the things I am incredibly proud about, the staff of FCPS, our teachers, our administrators, everyone who has worked so hard to make this a reality, we still kept virtual only instruction as an option for any family who wanted to do that. And so we had about 43% of our families say, not yet. I'm not yet comfortable having my child in a school. And so 43% of our students have stayed all virtual. And so that left us with 53% that we are now dividing up into those cohorts. So in some schools, that split is more like a 70-30. In others, it's a 60-40. It varies from school to school. But we have about 1/3 of our students coming in now in these cohorts. It's a big challenge for our teaching community because for many of our teachers, they are trying to address children sitting in front of them at the same time that they are entertaining children who are coming in remotely. But I have been in several classrooms where that concurrent teaching is occurring, and I can tell you that teachers are masterful at how they are navigating this and doing this with their students. If you can just kind of imagine an elementary classroom where the teacher's working with one reading group and the other 2 reading groups are at their seats, well, the teacher will do this introductory lesson, and then the students in front of her become one group, and the students who are virtual may go into a breakout room or do something else. And so the teachers are kind of navigating that way. We shortened the day to a 5-hour day. That way, as students leave, it gives teachers an opportunity to come back and connect with those students who are still only connecting virtually, because we were very committed that the quality of instruction needs to be the same, whether you're in hybrid or staying all virtual, so that we don't get into a situation where people feel like they're getting less because of the option they picked. We also had many staff members who were high risk or who lived with high risk family members who requested telework. And again, I'm incredibly proud of the work our FCPS team did to expedite those requests. And we have approximately 133 teachers and instructional assistants who are doing their teaching and assisting through telework. And we were able to accommodate pretty much all of those requests by working with the school and doing some systemic movement. So we also tried to take that into account. So some of the big obstacles and challenges for us, as you have heard, and again, this isn't unique to Frederick County, this is going on across the nation. We're asking teachers to be in a room with 15, 17, 18 other people, students, sometimes assistants, other adults in their classroom for an extended period of time. So there's obviously a fear. And I think that fear is very real. And it's something that, again, we see across the nation. So, of course, many of our teachers wanted to be vaccinated before they came back. And we were just not quite able to do that for them. And so we did, thanks to some of the relief funding that schools have received, put in 2 additional measures that go above and beyond what the CDC guidance for opening schools safely includes. And that is, we put air purifiers in classrooms and we ordered KN95 masks. Now, we'd had a stock of KN95 masks that our custodians were using when they were doing spraying to disinfect. We also were using that with some of our special needs programs because some of our students have an exemption and can't wear a mask. So we wanted to have more protection for staff working for those. Well, we've now made those KN95 masks available to all of our staff if they choose to. Again, just an extra layer of protection. One of the other things that we know, and one of the reasons we were very, very committed to trying to get students back in the building, is that we are seeing the impact of this pandemic on our children, not only from an academic perspective, but from a social and emotional perspective as well. And so academically, as we looked at second quarter and comparing where our students were in 2021 to where they were in 2020, we saw the number of students in our secondary schools who were getting D's and F's double from last year to this year. We heard from many of our high schools that our freshmen were particularly struggling, hadn't made that connection yet with adults in that building. We always know that freshmen don't quite understand the seriousness of your GPA in high school, and it takes a lot of work to get them there. Trying to do that remotely was even more of a struggle. So those academic grades were of concern to us. But we also were hearing a lot about disengagement, kids who had been very engaged and with us suddenly dropping off and needing much more to keep them on and inspired. We know, and I'm sure you've heard from Dr. Brookmeyer and from the Mental Health Association about this emotional trauma that this has taken. And so again, very proud of the fact that we had already started a social emotional learning curriculum. And Delegate Pippi, again, I want to thank you for your support with that with us last year. We started that in K-5 last year, and then this year we're able to expand it through our secondary schools as well. And social emotional learning curriculum just talks about self-regulation, helping children identify different strategies that will enable them to deal with the emotions that they are going to face, the stress that comes from dealing with this constant change, constant uncertainty. And so those lessons have been very valuable to us, but also the opportunity to have mental telehealth therapy sessions. We have a lot of our psychologists and some of our providers that we partner with have been able to do telehealth sessions with our students to try to help them during this time. But we know that there are many that we probably have not touched. And again, another reason to get back in that building so that our teachers and our counselors can see and work with these students to provide them with the supports that they need. Our youngest learners, again, when we talk about social skills, think about all of those kindergarten students who up until last Tuesday had not been in their school building, and trying to make friends virtually, and trying to, many of the skills that we cover at those early childhood levels are social skills. And that was incredibly difficult to achieve over this kind of Zoom. For us, it's a Google Meet format. And so again, some of our youngest learners and that need to get them into the buildings. So it took months and months of planning. We were incredibly successful. Challenges going forward. Again, one of the benefits of having your staff vaccinated would be that it could help us limit quarantining. But we know that anytime we have a positive case, and as long as we have spread in the community, we are going to have spread in the schools. Not necessarily spread in the schools, we're going to have cases coming into the schools. And we do a quick and immediate quarantine. So if there is a positive case identified in the school, we will have our principals will investigate, but also we work with the health department's contact tracers, and we will quarantine people. And so when a teacher has to go out on quarantine for 10 to 14 days, they can do telework and they can come in and still teach their class through the screen, but we need someone physically in that classroom to monitor students. And so we are very fortunate that we have resident substitutes in many of our buildings already, but we have been training and do have a lot of substitute teachers who are eager and anxious to get back into the buildings because that's their source of income. And we also have all of our certificated central office staff, myself included, who have been divided into 2 cohorts for substituting. So you're either the A week or the B week, so that we can kind of juggle and still try to get our regular day job done, but be available to go in and substitute as needed. That was something we learned from our colleagues in Carroll County, that being able to rely on your central office staff to help when necessary can be critically important. The other area where quarantining can impact us a lot are in our health rooms. And the Frederick County Department of Health provides our health techs that service our schools, as well as cluster nurses. Well, they've been very busy. And again, sometimes they have to quarantine. So one of the things we've been able to do is our athletic trainers who work with all of our high school sports teams have also now received training to provide health room coverage during the day. So we have an extra cadre of substitutes for our health rooms. And we are also going to be training some of our instructional assistants to get the CMT, Certified Medical Technician certification, so that they can become substitutes for the health rooms as well. So we have a very good plan for coverage as we need it going down the road. I want to echo what our business community said about the importance of just reminding everyone that having our schools open is critically important. And the best way to keep your schools open is to keep the spread in your community low. So everything that you do out in the community to support wearing masks, socially distancing, getting your vaccine enables us to keep schools open. And I really appreciated the conversation about the impact on women in the business community, because I know that we have had many people who have had to make that decision with schools not being open and young children at home. How do you manage this? It may have been something you could manage before when they were in school, but many families have had to make some difficult choices. And so again, everything we can do to get our schools open is going to support and help families to get back to work, get back to a routine. The other piece that I think is really important for folks to understand around the whole vaccination and the need to reach that herd immunity, until those social distancing requirements can be lessened. And there was hope that the CDC and their new guidance was going to say 3 feet to 6 feet, but they held firm on 6 feet for a very good reason. And I recently attended a webinar with CDC, and I understand exactly why they held firm on 6 feet. Holding firm on 6 feet means I can't open schools in a normal fashion. 3 feet, we're getting a little closer. But to open schools fully next year, and I know that's what everybody is hoping, that, we're going to be through this, and by next school year, we're going to be able to open normally. That is going to take a major shift in our immunity. And so again, getting those vaccines is not just about protecting yourself. It's really about enabling our community to get back to normal. And so we are going to emphasize that as much as we can. You've already heard my board is advocating to try to get as many vaccines into the arms of our staff as possible. So that continues to be a hurdle for us in terms of being able to operate smoothly and efficiently. And then the other thing I do want to share, and again, it was kind of serendipitous that I got to follow the business community, because we all you know, we are so symbiotically linked, but we have links at Frederick High School, and our business community has been incredible in creating this new vision for a high school program that adapted so beautifully to the virtual environment, and the engagement of that business community to still connect with our kids through Google Meets, through opportunities, allowing them to do virtual tours of businesses and things like that. I cannot say enough about those partnerships. And again, one of the beautiful, unique things about Frederick is all of those relationships and how strong they are. And that has been incredibly evident throughout this pandemic as well. So I didn't want to take too long and just kind of giving you an overview. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have. Madam Chair, I hope that addressed some of the pieces you wanted to hear this morning. And again, I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Well, thank you for that presentation. It certainly addressed many of the questions I had, plus some. So I'm going to open it up to the delegation, and I see Delegate Kerr's hand up. Delegate Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Albin, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thanks for the update. I just have a couple of questions here. So teachers are expected to monitor a physical classroom and a Zoom classroom at the same time.
In most cases, yes.
Yeah, boy, I know both of those are difficult, you know, on a good day. So I just don't know if that's preferable to just continuing virtual. But I guess what my real question about that is, you talked about emotional support for students. I think some of these teachers are going to also need emotional support. I've talked to many of them who are experienced unprecedented amounts of stress, and to the level of burnout, and they really, it's got to affect them psychologically, emotionally. And then, so what are the plans for prioritizing teacher vaccinations? You know, ideally, we all would have wanted them to be vaccinated before putting them in front of live students again. And then a couple more things I'd like to address is when the mitigation funds come in, are you going to, what's the group that's going to decide how those are prioritized? And then finally, what about summer plans?
So let me start with emotional support for our teachers, because you're right. And we started that before we even talked about transitioning to hybrid. We have an internal website that has many, many resources to support staff in just reminders of overall wellness, but also connections. When we came back into the buildings, when it was staff only, we also had our school psychologist available to talk to staff if they needed it. Because for many folks, if you think about it, they had not been to the physical location of work in almost a year. And all of us remember that uneasiness that we felt the first time we stepped back into our office buildings or our school buildings. And so we did have that in place, and we continue to have EAP resources available for all of our staff. I will share with you, Delegate Kerr, that we had many teachers who chose hybrid, where they were doing the virtual and the face-to-face, because they did not want to give up students. So when given the choice of, you could be the teacher who's worked with the face-to-face group and another teacher could do virtual, many teachers said, no, I want to keep all of my kids together. And again, we do have some videos on our website that sort of show you what that can look like. And again, they're masterful. Teachers have, being agile and adapting is what enables you to survive, right? But burnout is key. And it has been exhausting. It's constant change. It's constantly learning something new. It's pushing you out of your comfort zone all the time. It's dealing with the stress within your own family, and now trying to support students who need you very much as well. So as we look at summer programs, I'm going to pull these two things together for you. we are going to use much of our ESSER 2 funding to expand our summer options for students, because we know that there are many students who have academically lost and regressed, and we need to do something to try to get them back on track. But we also know there are some students who, okay, I got Algebra 1, but I'm hanging on by a thread. Before we move you into that next level math class, maybe you just need a little boost. Maybe you just need some reinforcement of key concepts and things like that. So we really want to look at a large variety of ways to approach summer school. But we also know that for many of our staff, they want to rest. They need a vacation. They need a break. So we've already started looking at how do we tap into some of our retirees? How do we tap into the interns who will just be graduating from college, many of whom have done student teaching experiences that don't include being face-to-face with children in a classroom? And so that summer school opportunity gives them a chance to be face-to-face with children in a classroom and hone that skill before they move into the next school year. So we've already started to look at recruitment options that will enable us to stand up a larger summer program, recognizing that for many of our staff, they're going to need a break. They're going to need some time off to just re-energize and recoup before we start the school year. The great thing about the ESSER 2 funding also is that it will take us through this summer, the summer of 21, but it will also give us funding that we can use in the summer of 22. And so we're looking at this as a long-term, how do we recover kind of program. And so having both of those summers included in that funding is huge for us. And in terms of the teams that are putting this together, we do have a variety of stakeholders involved in that to come up with ideas and suggestions and look at possibilities. And then of course, there will be design work. That will also be another way that staff can earn some additional money and maybe move into something that's a little bit less demanding than physically being in front of students, but still an opportunity in the summer to develop and grow and earn some additional funding. Did that answer all your questions?
Yes, thanks for addressing all of those. And I really hope we can find some way to recognize and thank the teachers and the staff and everyone at the involved with student learning for the sacrifices they're making during this. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And I know that our board is planning to do a major celebration of everyone, the bus drivers, the food and nutrition services workers. We have served over 1 million meals since last March. They never stopped. 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. We have delivered to our students in the community since last March. So yes, it has been a true team effort and lots of folks deserving of recognition.
And let us know how the delegation can help, even if it's delivering a bunch of citations. At least they'll know that we recognize their tremendous effort. Delegate Krim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Superintendent, I'm glad to hear the students are getting back. I mean, even if it's a hybrid, I mean, that it has been a tremendous burden to families and to these students. And I know of everybody at the Board of Education, but it has really been a burden on the community to have these children out of school and the learning loss that has occurred. So I have 2 little grandchildren that are in the New York City school system. And the first grader has been in a hybrid learning plan since last fall.
Mm-hmm.
And the preschooler has gone to school every day. So the way it worked in New York City, which I think has been recognized as a successful program for the elementary schools. I actually went up there one week to witness it. So I know what's going on. So there are, as Delegate Kerr pointed out, there are virtual teachers and there are in-class teachers, separate. So she goes to school 2 days a week in class. And then they have remote learning centers where she goes, not to school, but to a remote learning center where they take their computers and they do their work and they're in the room with other children. And then they have like a supervisor watching them. So she's actually out of the house for 4 days. So it's worked up there great. I mean, they did have one instance of where they had to take time off because they did have some COVID, but they recovered from that and they were right back in as soon as it was over. So I think they've done a great job, as well as can be expected. I don't know if we're ever going to be great, but they did as well as can be expected. I watched it happen, and I'm sure it will work here. I'm just sorry it couldn't have worked earlier for many of our families and for our kids, for goodness sakes. So, and I just want to be sure that you tap into all these funds that we have now made available in the legislature for right now getting back to school, the summer program. Just make sure that all of those funds are used to the best of your ability. Thank you.
And we are very, very appreciative of the funds because there are huge costs associated with operating a school when you are dealing with COVID. From the mask, as I said, we added air purifiers, all of the cleaning tools and materials that you need, like sprayers and things that we bought for our buses, for our custodians. So there have been a lot of costs just in the physical environment. And then again, we offered tutoring, virtual tutoring opportunities. We'll continue to do tutoring opportunities, and then the summer programs and things like that. I also realized that I did not answer one of Delegate Kerr's questions, and that was about prioritizing for staff. We were very grateful when the governor moved us into 1B, all educators into 1B. But then the Maryland Department of Health said 75 plus had to be prioritized over educators. We originally had our staff grouped into priority groups, those who were working face-to-face with students being the top priority, particularly our special educators, our Rock Creek School, where people have to do diapering and things like that, down to folks like me in central office who can choose to be interacting, but you don't have to. Well, we were starting down that path. Dr. Brookmeyer and I had a dream of having an FCPS only clinic where we were going to do 1,000 shots a day and be done in 6 days. But then the supply dried up, and then she was faced with the challenge of 75 plus and only being able to allocate a certain amount. So we right now have no control over how our staff are prioritized. They do a random pull of anybody in that category when they have available vaccines, and they've been doing more than the 100 that are required. But I know this has also presented a challenge for my board, because with so many of our teachers and staff going to the mass vac sites or CVS or things like that, we don't really have any good sense right now how many of our staff are vaccinated. And so that's a little bit tricky as we try to figure out, where we are in that regard. And because it's confidential health information, I'm sure many of them would volunteer it, but I can't ask them. They don't have to tell me if they've been vaccinated or not. So.
I see one more question from Delegate Pepe.
I see we're out of time, so I don't want to take any more time. I just want to thank the superintendent for kind of shifting and focusing on some mental health stuff for the students. I think that's probably more important now than ever, especially with the last year, what we've all had to deal with. And the other thing, and I don't know if this is helpful to the conversation, but someone sent me a graphic, and it showed that Maryland, as a percentage for in-person students, was ranked 50th in the whole country, meaning that we had less students in person than any state in America. And, I guess for the parents that are concerned, we're last, we're in last place. Out of every state in America, we have the least amount of students in school. So I guess for the folks that are really concerned, well, we've waited. I mean, it looks like the state has waited to the end. And for the folks that want reassurances, you know, we have 49 other states to compare to see how they're doing, to see, you know, what the risks are and the challenges, as Delegate Krim mentioned with her personal story up in New York City. So, but I think that's important. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I saw that we were ranked 50th every state in America for having the least amount of kids in schools. So, but you know, keep up the hard work. It's not easy dealing with what you guys are dealing with all the different demands pulling you in different directions. And we just got to keep moving forward. So, thank you.
And I will share that I am very proud of the fact that when we moved to hybrid, we did it pre-K to 12. And a lot of the districts, even with the mandate that everybody do something by March 1st, are kind of doing a couple of grades here, a couple of grades there. And I think right now the current plan in Montgomery doesn't have every grade back until the middle of April. And so it was a huge lift, but to get pre-K through 12 coming in for hybrid so that we could meet those needs across the spectrum, I think that, again, yes, Maryland was slow in getting schools reopened, but you can be proud that Frederick County, as we moved into the second semester, got our students back as quickly as we could.
Well, thank you, Dr. Albin. I want to reiterate the sentiment you've been hearing from our delegation. We appreciate all the work you've been doing. You've had some very tough choices to make and some very loud voices on all aspects of the spectrum. I was very impressed to learn that not only are you dealing with the battles of today, but thinking ahead to tomorrow in your plans for how to best utilize the summer months. So I appreciate that. I commend you for that. And I thank you so much for updating the delegation, because as I've shared, of all the topics that we are hearing about, and I have to say my email inbox is about 2 to 3-fold what it has been in past sessions. The issue of going back to school is up there in the top 5. So thank you for updating us.
I thank you. And I want to recognize that my board has been incredibly supportive of this as well. And I know Mr. Mason's inbox probably looks similar to yours, only his is probably 100% about, well, no longer going back to school. Now we're getting the we need spectators at sporting events too. Those emails are coming in as well. So thank you so much for your time. I am happy to be here at any time that I can to assist you in whatever way I can. Thank you so much.
Okay, my pleasure. Chris, do we have anyone from the public in the YouTube area that has either a question or a comment?
I have not seen any comments been added to the YouTube channel, and I do not see anybody in the waiting room asking to speak for a question.
Okay. Given that, we do not have another meeting scheduled right now. Obviously, we're going to try to take one more stab at clarifying the amendments for the Board of Ed replacement bill. I'm going to reach out to those of you that had comments directly so that we make sure that this time we address your needs for clarification. Just a quick poll for everyone. What works better for you? Monday mornings or Friday mornings? Anyone have a preference?
No preference.
No preference. Okay. Then, Senator Young.
If we have a Friday morning meeting, it's got to be quick because we meet on Friday mornings.
Okay. The only thing I see for us to do at this point is to finalize those amendments. I know that Congressman Raskin had wanted to address us And maybe if he still wants to come on and can make the same meeting, we'll put that second so that if you've got to leave after the vote, you're welcome to do that. And if you want to stay on to hear Congressman Raskin's comments, if he can join us, that will always be optional. So given we are now well past the 2-hour mark, I am going to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 That sounds pretty uniform. So we will see you at a soon to be announced time and place. Thank